Welcome to Silent Queen's Reckoning. I'm so glad you could join us today. Now let's dive right into the story.
Chapter 1. Catherine Hayes was asked to sign her divorce papers at her own anniversary dinner, while her husband held her best friend's hand across the table. The private room went silent. Not politely quiet. Not the warm pause before a toast. It was the kind of silence that falls when everyone sees a blade, but no one wants to admit who is holding it. Jason Hayes sat beside Allison Reed beneath a wall of white roses and gold lights. 3 years earlier, Catherine had booked that same room at the Meridian Hotel for her wedding dinner. Tonight, Jason had booked it again for what Catherine thought was an anniversary celebration. Instead, a stack of divorce papers lay in front of her dessert plate. The top page was already flagged with a yellow sticker. "Sign here." Catherine looked at the sticker first, then at the pen Jason had placed beside it, then at Allison's hand resting openly over his. Allison had been Catherine's best friend for 20 years. They had shared school lunches, cheap apartments, hospital waiting rooms, birthdays, secrets, and the kind of history that made betrayal feel almost impossible until it happened. Now Allison wore Catherine's mother's pearl necklace. The necklace sat against her pale throat like a quiet insult. Catherine had searched for it that morning and assumed she had misplaced it in grief or exhaustion. Now she knew it had not been lost. It had been chosen. Jason cleared his throat. He wore a navy suit, the one Catherine had bought him when he first became a project director. His hair was perfect. His jaw was tense. He looked like a man who had prepared for tears, but not for stillness. "Catherine," he said, "I know this is painful, but dragging it out will only make it worse." Allison squeezed his hand. Her red nails flashed under the candlelight. "Kath," she said softly, using the nickname she had no right to use anymore. "Please do not make this ugly. Sometimes love changes. It does not mean anyone planned to hurt you." Across the table, Jason's lawyer adjusted his glasses and pretended not to be uncomfortable. 2 of Jason's co-workers sat near the wine cabinet, invited under the excuse of celebrating a business milestone. Catherine understood why now. Jason wanted witnesses. He wanted pressure. He wanted her humiliation wrapped in the appearance of civilized agreement. Catherine did not touch the papers. Her hands stayed folded in her lap, fingers cold against the silk of her black dress. Inside her chest, something had cracked so deeply that the pain seemed to have passed into a strange, clear quiet. Jason leaned forward. "The apartment will be treated as marital property. The savings will be divided evenly. The car stays with me because I use it for work. I am not trying to punish you. This is fair." Fair. The word was so wrong that Catherine almost smiled. Allison tilted her head, her eyes shining with practiced sympathy. "You still have your job. You are strong. You will rebuild." Catherine finally looked at her. "Take off the necklace." Allison blinked. Jason's face tightened. "This is not about jewelry." "It is my mother's necklace," Catherine said. "Take it off." The room shifted. A server near the door lowered his tray. One coworker looked at Allison's throat, then quickly at his wine glass. Allison touched the pearls with 2 fingers. "You said I could borrow jewelry whenever I wanted. We were like sisters." "Were," Catherine said. Jason exhaled sharply. "Do not start a scene over a necklace." Catherine turned to him. "You brought my best friend to my anniversary dinner, put divorce papers beside my plate, gave her my mother's pearls, and invited your co-workers to watch." The scene started before I spoke. For the first time that night, Jason looked uncertain. It lasted less than a second. Then he recovered. "You always do this," he said. "You turn everything into an accusation. Allison and I did not choose this to hurt you. We fell in love." Allison lowered her eyes at the word love, as if pretending to be ashamed made it noble. Catherine remembered Allison arriving at her door 3 months earlier with a cream suitcase, red eyes, and a broken voice. She had said her boyfriend had thrown her out. She had said she had nowhere to go. Catherine had opened the door, made tea, changed the guest sheets, and told Jason they could not leave Allison alone during a crisis. For 3 months, Allison had slept under Catherine's roof. For 3 months, Catherine had heard late-night laughter and told herself she was being insecure. For 3 months, Jason had called her distant, cold, too focused on work. Now she understood. He had been building a story where Catherine was the problem before she even knew there was a war. Jason pushed the pen closer. "Sign it tonight. We can all leave with dignity." Catherine looked down at the papers. The apartment listed as shared property. The savings split in half, though Jason had already drained most of them in small transfers. The car assigned to him, though the down payment came from their joint account. No mention of the money wired to Allison. No mention of the stolen necklace. No mention of the fact that the apartment belonged to Catherine before the marriage, paid through a family trust Jason had never bothered to understand. She lifted the pen. Jason's shoulders relaxed. Allison's mouth softened with triumph. Catherine placed the pen across the papers without signing. No. Jason stared at her. Excuse me. No, Catherine repeated. I will not sign this. His voice dropped. Catherine, do not embarrass yourself. She reached into her bag and removed her phone. Allison's smile thinned. Who are you calling? Catherine did not answer. She dialed once. The call connected on the second ring. Margaret, Catherine said, her eyes on Jason. They gave me the papers. Yes. At the hotel. Bring the corrected file. Jason sat up straighter. Corrected file? He asked. Catherine ended the call and set the phone beside the unsigned papers. You wanted witnesses, she said. So we will use them. Chapter 2. Margaret Sloane arrived 11 minutes later with a leather folder, 2 assistants, and the calm expression of a woman who had never needed to raise her voice to control a room. Jason recognized her immediately. Not by name, by type. She had the polished severity of old money, private offices, and legal consequences that did not have to hurry. Her gray hair was pinned low. Her black suit had no sparkle. Her eyes moved over the table once and understood everything. The papers, the necklace, Allison's hand, Jason's lawyer, the audience. Miss Hayes, Margaret said to Catherine. Jason frowned. Miss Hayes. Margaret placed the leather folder on the table. Yes. She is my wife. For now, Margaret said. Allison shifted in her seat. Catherine felt the room breathe differently. Margaret had that effect. She did not enter a room as help. She entered as structure. Jason's lawyer cleared his throat. I am counsel for Mr. Hayes. This is intended to be an amicable settlement discussion. Margaret looked at the divorce papers in front of Catherine. In a hotel private room, during an anniversary dinner, with the husband's affair partner wearing the wife's family jewelry. The lawyer's mouth closed. One of Jason's co-workers looked down at his plate. Jason's face darkened. Allison is not an affair partner. Catherine and I have been emotionally separated for months. Catherine almost laughed at the efficiency of the lie. That is interesting, Margaret said. Because 3 months ago, Ms. Reed moved into Catherine's apartment as a guest. Allison's cheeks flushed. I was in a difficult situation. And you are now wearing property from Catherine's personal jewelry safe. Allison's fingers went to the pearls again. Jason snapped. Enough about the necklace. Margaret opened the folder. It is not merely about the necklace. It is about a pattern. Unauthorized use of personal property. Unauthorized transfers from a joint account. An inaccurate divorce proposal. And an attempt to pressure my client into signing in a public setting. Jason looked at Catherine. Your client? Catherine met his eyes. Yes. You hired a lawyer behind my back? You slept with my best friend in my home. We can both be surprised tonight. A tiny sound escaped someone near the door. It might have been a cough. It might have been a laugh quickly killed. Jason's jaw tightened. Margaret slid the first document across the table. Let us begin with the apartment. Jason's lawyer leaned in. Margaret continued. The Upper West Side apartment is not a marital asset. It was purchased before the marriage through the Hartwell Family Residential Trust, with Catherine as the sole beneficiary for that unit. Mortgage payments were made from her separate account. Mr. Hayes contributed no purchase funds. Jason blinked. That is not true. Catherine watched him. You lived there for 3 years and never asked whose name was on the deed. Because we were married. Because you assumed. Allison's eyes darted from Jason to Catherine. Margaret placed a copy of the deed on top of Jason's divorce papers. The contrast was almost beautiful. His version of reality, overwritten by the one recorded in ink. The apartment remains Catherine's separate property, Margaret said. Jason's lawyer took the document and read quickly. His face lost color. Jason turned on him. Did you know about this? You told me the apartment was jointly acquired, the lawyer said carefully. It was our home. That is not the same thing. The sentence landed harder because it came from Jason's own side. Allison removed her hand from Jason's. Catherine noticed. So did Jason. His eyes flashed with irritation, but he kept his voice controlled. Fine. The apartment is hers. We can discuss that. The rest is still straightforward. Margaret slid the next document forward. The rest is not straightforward. The page showed a simple list. Dates. Transfers. Amounts. Recipient names. Allison saw her own name and went still. Over the last 7 months, Margaret said. Nearly $48,000 left the marital joint account through withdrawals and transfers connected to Mr. Hayes. A significant portion was later sent to Ms. Reed. Allison whispered Jason. Jason did not look at her. She needed help, he said. Catherine's voice stayed even. She needed help buying dresses, hotel rooms, and a necklace cleaner for jewelry she stole from me? Allison flinched. Margaret did not pause. Those funds will be reconciled in the settlement. Any amount taken from the joint account for private use must be accounted for. Jason leaned forward. You are trying to humiliate me. No, Catherine said. You chose the audience. The room became very quiet again. For the first time, Allison looked truly afraid. Not heartbroken. Not guilty. Afraid. She had walked into the dinner believing Catherine was the abandoned wife who would cry, beg, sign, and leave. Now she was realizing she had entered a room with the wrong map. Margaret turned to her. Ms. Reed, I recommend you remove the necklace before this becomes a separate police report. Allison's hands trembled. Jason snapped. She is not removing anything like a criminal. Catherine looked at him. Then she can leave wearing it and explain to security why my mother's pearls are around her neck. The head waiter, who had been standing near the wall in agonized silence, suddenly straightened. Catherine caught his eye and gave one small nod. He stepped out. Allison understood before Jason did. Her face went white. She reached behind her neck, fumbled with the clasp, and removed the necklace. For one terrible second, Catherine saw her mother's pearls pooled in Allison's red-nailed hand. Allison placed them on the table. Catherine picked them up slowly. She did not put them on. She placed them inside her bag where they belonged. Jason stared at her. The arrogance in his face had cracked, but something uglier was pushing through. You planned this, he said. Catherine looked at the unsigned papers, the corrected documents, the woman who had pretended to be her friend, and the man who had mistaken kindness for weakness. No, she said. You planned this. I prepared for it. Chapter 3. 3 months earlier, Allison had arrived in the rain with a suitcase and a story. Catherine opened the apartment door to find her best friend standing in the hallway, soaked at the shoulders, mascara smudged beneath both eyes. The cream suitcase beside her had one broken wheel. She looked smaller than usual, folded inward, as if life had finally punished her enough to make her gentle. I did not know where else to go, Allison said. Catherine let her in before asking details. That was the kind of friend she had been. Jason was in the kitchen when Allison entered. He looked up from his laptop, surprised, then concerned in exactly the right measure. He got towels. Catherine made tea. Allison sat at the island and told them her boyfriend had kicked her out after a fight, that her savings were low, that she was embarrassed, that she would only need a few days. Stay as long as you need, Catherine said. Jason glanced at her then, not with irritation, with something that looked like admiration. Later, Catherine would wonder when that look changed. At first, Allison was grateful. Too grateful. She folded blankets she did not need to fold. She offered to cook. She praised the apartment until the praise felt less like appreciation and more like study. You are so lucky, she said one morning, standing by the living room windows. This place is unreal. Catherine smiled over her coffee. It is home. Jason must be proud. Of the apartment? Of all of it. You. This life. Catherine had not known how to answer. Jason rarely talked about being proud. He talked about deadlines, promotions, clients, delayed flights, and how Catherine worked too much. Pride was not a language he used inside the marriage. Allison learned the apartment quickly. Which cabinet held the good wine glasses? Which drawer held spare keys? Which closet stored Catherine's coats? Which shelf in the bedroom held the small velvet box with her mother's pearls? Catherine did not notice the learning at first because trust makes observation lazy. Jason began coming home earlier when Allison cooked. He laughed more at dinner. He told stories Catherine had heard before, but Allison laughed as if each one opened a secret door. When Catherine joined late after work calls, she found the two of them sitting close on the sofa, a bowl of popcorn between them, their shoulders almost touching. Jason called her suspicious when she mentioned it. Allison called her tired. You need rest, Kath, Allison said, touching her arm. You see shadows when you are exhausted. Catherine wanted to believe that. It was easier to distrust her own instincts than to accuse two people she loved. Then came the little thefts. Not thefts that looked like thefts. Borrowings. Accidents. Misunderstandings. A silk scarf Catherine could not find, later appearing around Allison's hair. A lipstick shade Jason complimented on Allison, though Catherine had bought it for herself. A pair of earrings missing from the tray, then reappearing after Catherine asked twice. Each time, Allison apologized sweetly. "I thought you said I could borrow it." Each time, Jason sighed. "It is just a scarf, Catherine." The words trained Catherine to feel petty. That was their purpose. By the second month, Allison had stopped acting like a guest. She left her perfume in the hall bathroom. She kept oat milk in the fridge because Jason liked it in coffee now. She sat in Catherine's favorite reading chair and tucked her feet under her as if the chair had been waiting for her all along. Catherine worked longer hours. Not because she wanted to avoid home. Not at first. Her project at Meridian Data Systems had entered a stressful stage. Jason worked there too, in a different division, and had recently become obsessed with a product launch tied to a major client. He came home tense, secretive, and strangely defensive about his laptop. Catherine thought the pressure explained his mood. Then one Thursday, her morning meeting was canceled after she had already left the apartment. She bought pastries from the bakery downstairs, thinking she would surprise them both with breakfast. She remembered feeling almost cheerful in the elevator. It embarrassed her later, that small innocent happiness before the door opened. Inside, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Then she heard Allison laugh from the primary bedroom. Not the guest room. The primary bedroom. Catherine stood in the hallway with the pastry bag in her hand and listened. She heard Jason's voice first. "She will never suspect it. Catherine trusts you more than she trusts herself." Allison laughed again, lower this time. "She is sweet. That is her problem. Sweet is one word. Boring." Jason said nothing for a second. Then both of them laughed. The pastry bag slipped from Catherine's fingers and landed softly on the runner. She did not open the door. She did not scream. She did not give them the satisfaction of becoming the scene they already expected. She backed away, picked up the bag, and left the apartment as quietly as she had entered. Outside, the city was bright and indifferent. Catherine walked to a small park 2 blocks away and sat on a bench for nearly an hour. The pastries grew cold beside her. Her hands shook in her lap. Every memory with Allison rearranged itself. Every dismissive sentence from Jason sharpened. The betrayal did not feel like one wound. It felt like discovering the floor had been hollow for months. At noon, Catherine called Margaret Sloan. Margaret had been her family's attorney since Catherine's father died. Jason knew her vaguely as that trust lawyer your mother uses. He had never been interested enough to know more. That had been useful. When Margaret answered, Catherine did not cry. She gave facts. Allison had moved in. Jason was having an affair. Money might be missing. Catherine wanted the apartment deed, bank records, vehicle payments, and anything tied to Jason's recent work activity preserved. Margaret listened without interruption. Then she said, "Do not confront him yet." Catherine looked at the cold pastries on the bench. "I know. Can you go home tonight and behave normally?" Catherine closed her eyes. Could she watch Allison drink from her mugs? Could she listen to Jason ask about dinner? Could she sleep in a bed where she had heard them laugh? No, but she could perform. She had been performing calm for years. "Yes," Catherine said. "Good. Then we begin with paper." Chapter 4. Paper told the truth faster than people. Within a week, Margaret had a clean file. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just records. The apartment was Catherine's. Purchased before the marriage through a trust funded by her parents, with Catherine as sole beneficiary. Jason had lived there, decorated it, hosted co-workers in it, and called it his home, but he had never owned a single legal inch of it. The joint savings account had been drained slowly. Not all at once. Jason was too cautious for that. 800 here. 2,000 there. A transfer after a work trip. A withdrawal after a weekend when Allison claimed she needed emergency dental work. Almost $50,000 in 7 months. Some money went to Jason's private account. Some went to Allison. Some paid for the SUV Jason insisted was necessary for work. Catherine stared at the transfer list in Margaret's office and felt grief turn into something colder. "He bought her safety with my money," she said. Margaret sat across from her. "He bought the illusion of generosity with money he will now have to explain." That helped slightly. The necklace was easier. Catherine found the insurance photographs, purchase receipt, and appraisal from her mother's estate file. The pearls were not merely sentimental. They were documented property. "If she wears them publicly, it becomes useful," Margaret said. Catherine thought that sounded harsh. Then Allison wore them to the anniversary dinner. After the financial records came the work files. That part Catherine had not wanted to believe. Jason worked in Meridian's strategy division. Catherine worked in project delivery. They did not report to each other, but their work overlapped around one important launch: a hospital data platform that Meridian hoped would secure a major contract. Jason had access to pricing drafts, client lists, and technical summaries. Catherine discovered the first strange file by accident. She had used Jason's home office printer to print a shipping label and found a folder open on his desktop. The file name was too familiar. It belonged to a project Catherine's team had not released outside Meridian. She did not copy everything wildly. Margaret had warned her not to become reckless in anger. Catherine took photographs of file names, dates, and a visible email thread where Jason discussed bringing useful materials to a competitor after his divorce was finalized. The competitor's name was enough: Northline Systems. Catherine knew Northline. Everyone in their field knew Northline. They lost a bid to Meridian the previous year and had been circling the hospital contract ever since. Jason was not just leaving his wife. He was preparing to sell his company's trust for a better title. When Catherine gave Margaret the photographs, the lawyer's expression tightened. "This needs to go to Meridian." Catherine looked down. "If I report him, people will say I did it because of the affair. Some will. And if I do not, then you become a person who knew and stayed silent." That answer hurt because it was clean. Catherine did not report immediately. She waited until after Jason made his move. Margaret called it letting him declare his intent. Catherine called it surviving until the room finally showed its shape. Jason chose the anniversary dinner. He booked the Meridian Hotel because he wanted elegance. He invited his co-workers because he wanted social pressure. He brought Allison because he wanted Catherine to see she had been replaced. He placed divorce papers beside her plate because he wanted her to feel the walls closing in. He did not know the walls belonged to her. The Meridian Hotel was not Catherine's property, but the private room had been reserved through her family's membership account. Jason had used the account for years, thinking it was a small privilege from Catherine's mother. He never learned that Hartwell Trust members had strict conduct clauses attached to private bookings. That meant Catherine could call management. That meant security would listen. That meant Allison could not walk out wearing the pearls without consequences. Small powers mattered. Not every victory required a throne. Sometimes it required a room manager who knew whose signature was on the membership file. Chapter 5. Back in the private dining room, Jason tried to regain control the only way he knew how. He lowered his voice and spoke as if Catherine were embarrassing herself. "Enough. You made your point. We can discuss the apartment and the money later. Allison and I are leaving." Allison stood too quickly, the chair scraping behind her. Without the pearl necklace, her throat looked bare. Her confidence had gone with it. Catherine stayed seated. "Sit down, Allison." Allison froze. Jason laughed once. "You do not give her orders." "No," Catherine said. "But if she leaves now, she leaves as the woman who wore stolen jewelry to my divorce ambush and received marital funds from my husband. I thought she might prefer to hear what comes next." Allison sat. Jason stared at her, offended by the obedience. That was the first visible fracture between them. Margaret placed another document on the table, this one shorter. "This is Catherine's proposed temporary agreement. Mr. Hayes will vacate the apartment within 48 hours. He will preserve all financial records. He will stop using Catherine's family membership accounts, property, and contacts. Funds transferred to Ms. Reed from marital accounts will be included in the settlement review." Jason shook his head. "I am not leaving my home in 48 hours. Catherine looked at him. "It is not your home. I lived there." So did Allison. The room went still. Jason leaned toward her. "Careful." Catherine recognized the tone. It was the one he used when he wanted to scare her into becoming reasonable. For years, reasonable had meant quiet. "Not tonight." "I was careful when I opened my door to her," Catherine said. "I was careful when I ignored my own instincts. I was careful when you came home late and called me cold for noticing. I was careful until being careful only protected the people hurting me." Jason's face tightened. Allison looked down. Margaret continued. "If Mr. Hayes refuses to vacate voluntarily, we will file for exclusive occupancy based on ownership and conduct. That is slower, but it will create a public record." Jason's lawyer leaned toward him and whispered. Jason pulled away, irritated. "Do not tell me to accept this," he muttered. "I am telling you to consider exposure," the lawyer said quietly. Another fracture. Catherine watched it happen without satisfaction. Satisfaction would come later, maybe. Right now, there was only steadiness. Jason looked around the table. His co-workers had become statues. They had arrived expecting dessert and gossip. They were leaving with knowledge. "You think this makes you look strong?" he asked Catherine. "Dragging private pain into a public room? You dragged it here. Because I wanted a clean ending. You wanted a silent victim." Allison made a small sound. Jason turned to her. "Stop acting shocked," he snapped. Allison recoiled. Catherine saw the moment Allison understood what Catherine had understood too late. Jason's tenderness lasted only as long as it made him feel powerful. The second a woman became inconvenient, he turned cold. The head waiter returned with the hotel manager and 2 security staff. The manager was a composed woman in a charcoal dress. She approached Catherine first. "Ms. Hayes, the necklace has been returned?" "Yes." "Would you like us to document the incident?" Jason stood. "This is absurd." The manager did not look at him. She waited for Catherine. Catherine thought of her mother fastening the pearls around her neck before her wedding. She thought of Allison wearing them at the table. She thought of all the times she had swallowed pain to keep a room comfortable. "Yes," Catherine said. "Document it." Allison covered her mouth. Jason's lawyer closed his eyes. The manager nodded. "Of course." That was when Jason finally understood that the room no longer belonged to him. Chapter 6. Jason left the hotel without dessert, without Allison's hand in his, and without the divorce papers he had expected Catherine to sign. Catherine did not go home. She could not stand the thought of walking into the apartment while his clothes still hung in the closet and Allison's perfume still lingered in the guest bathroom. Instead, she went with Margaret to the attorney's office, a quiet building 10 blocks away where the lights were softer and no one pretended betrayal was romance. Margaret made tea. Catherine held the cup with both hands. For the first time that night, the shaking began. Not dramatic, not visible unless someone looked closely. A tremor in her fingers, a looseness in her knees, the delayed reaction of a body that had remained upright because collapse would have pleased the wrong people. Margaret noticed and said nothing for a while. That was why Catherine trusted her. Some people rushed to fill pain with advice. Margaret gave pain a chair. After several minutes, Catherine set the cup down. "I want him out of the apartment." "We can do that." "I want every dollar traced." "Already started." "And I want Meridian to know." Margaret's eyes sharpened. "About the files?" Catherine nodded. "You understand this may affect your own work environment." "Yes." "People may talk." "They're already talking." Margaret leaned back. "Then we keep it simple. You do not accuse loudly. You report facts quietly to the right person." That was how the next morning began. Catherine dressed in a gray suit, pinned her hair low, and went to Meridian as if it were any other workday. Her eyes were slightly swollen, but her posture was straight. In the elevator, 2 employees laughed about weekend plans. Catherine watched the floor numbers climb and felt as if she were rising through water. At 9, she requested a private meeting with Naomi Price, the chief operating officer. Naomi was not warm. She was better than warm. She was fair. When Catherine entered her office, Naomi looked up from a tablet and immediately closed the door. "You look like you have not slept." "I have not." "Sit down." Catherine sat and placed a folder on the desk. She did not tell the whole affair story. She did not describe Allison's perfume, the necklace, the dinner, or the moment she heard laughter from her bedroom. Those things mattered to Catherine's heart, but not to Meridian. She gave Naomi what mattered to the company. File names, dates, photographs of the open folder, the email line referring to Northline, Jason's upcoming move, the possibility that confidential client material had been copied. Naomi read in silence. Her face changed only once when she saw the competitor's name. "Who else has seen this?" "My attorney." "Did you access his files after discovering this?" "No. I photographed what was visible when I used the printer. Margaret told me not to touch anything else." Naomi gave a short nod. Respect, not approval. "Good." Catherine felt a small breath return to her lungs. Naomi stood. "You did the right thing bringing this here. Go back to your desk. Do not discuss it. If Jason contacts you about work, forward it to legal." "Will I be pulled into this?" "Possibly. But not today." Catherine stood. Her legs felt steadier. As she reached the door, Naomi added, "Catherine." She turned. "This will not be treated as domestic drama." The sentence almost made Catherine cry. Not because it was kind, because it was precise. By noon, Jason's system access was suspended. By 1, his name disappeared from a shared project channel. By 2, he called Catherine 7 times. She did not answer. At 3, he sent a message. "What did you do?" Catherine looked at the screen. Her thumb hovered for a moment. Then she typed, "I stopped protecting you from your own choices." She did not send it. She deleted it. Then she forwarded the message to Margaret and Naomi, as instructed. That felt better than any perfect comeback. Chapter 7. Jason came to the apartment that night with the wrong kind of apology. Catherine had already packed his clothes. 2 suitcases stood by the door. His shoes were in garment bags. His watches were in a small box on the console. His framed awards, the ones he had hung above Catherine's desk because he said there was better light there, were stacked beside the umbrella stand. She had not thrown anything. She had not cut sleeves or smashed cologne bottles or written insults across the mirror. She had packed like a woman closing a file. When Jason opened the door, he stopped at the sight of the suitcases. "You changed the locks?" "Not yet." "Catherine." He stepped inside. He looked tired, really tired. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, his face gray around the mouth. The polished man from the hotel had been replaced by someone who had spent a day watching consequences move faster than charm. "We need to talk. You can take your things." "That is not talking." "No," Catherine said. "It is the part that still involves me." Jason looked at the suitcases again. "You reported me. I reported what I found. You could have come to me first." Catherine stared at him. For a moment, the old apartment seemed to hold its breath. The sofa they had chosen together. The kitchen island where Allison had cried into tea. The hallway where Catherine had heard the laugh that changed everything. Every object in the room seemed to wait for her answer. "You brought divorce papers to my anniversary dinner," she said. "You brought Allison. You let her wear my mother's necklace. You tried to take my home, my money, and my silence. And now you want to talk about courtesy." Jason closed his eyes briefly. "I made mistakes." "No. You made plans." The distinction hit him. She saw it land. He lowered his voice. "The work issue is complicated. You do not understand the pressure I was under." There it was. The larger excuse. Pressure. Ambition. Opportunity. The language men used when they wanted betrayal to sound like weather. "I understand enough. Northline approached me. They were willing to give me a senior role. I only shared background material. Nothing final. That is for Meridian to decide." His expression hardened. "You are going to ruin me. I am not that powerful. Do not pretend. You know what this will do." Catherine walked to the console and picked up the apartment key he had left in the bowl that morning. "I know what you did." He looked at the key. "You loved me once." The sentence was not an apology. It was a hook. Catherine felt it catch the softer part of her, the part that remembered Jason asleep on the sofa after long workdays, Jason bringing soup when she was sick, Jason whispering vows under white flowers 3 years earlier. That part of her was real. It was also not in charge anymore. "Yes," she said. "I did." His eyes flickered with hope. "Then help me. Just say you misunderstood the files. Say this is personal stress. They will listen to you." There it was. The wrong apology. Not "I am sorry I betrayed you." Not "I am sorry I used your home." Not "I am sorry I humiliated you in front of people." "Help me." Catherine placed the key on the console between them. "I will not lie for you." Jason's hope vanished, replaced by anger so quickly it almost looked like fear. "You think you are innocent in all this?" "Yes. You were never there. You cared more about work than marriage." Allison listened. Catherine nodded slowly. "Then you should go to her." He said nothing. That silence told her more than any confession. Allison had already become less useful. Jason stepped closer. "She is not the point. She was important enough to bring to dinner. Because I needed you to accept reality." Catherine picked up one suitcase handle and rolled it toward him. "Here is reality. You have 48 hours to remove anything I missed. After that, access changes." He looked at the suitcase as if it were beneath him. "You cannot just erase me." "No," she said. "But I can stop housing you." Jason's face twisted. For a second, Catherine thought he might say something cruel enough to become unforgettable. Instead, he picked up the suitcase. At the door, he turned. "Allison was right," he said. "You are cold." Catherine felt the words touch her and fall away. "No," she said. "I am finished." He left. The door closed. Catherine locked it. Then she slid down the wall and cried for the first time since the hotel. She cried because grief still existed even when the decision was right. She cried because losing a marriage hurt even when the marriage had been poisoned. She cried because the apartment was hers, the money was traceable, the evidence was strong, and none of that erased the fact that she had once loved the man whose suitcase now stood in the hallway outside. When the tears ended, she stood, washed her face, and changed the bedding. That was not dramatic. It was necessary. Chapter 8. Allison called the next morning. Catherine let it ring. Then Allison texted. Please. I need to explain. Catherine stared at the message while sitting at the kitchen island with black coffee and a folder of documents. The apartment felt larger without Jason's things, but not peaceful yet. Peace had not moved in. Only space had. Another message appeared. Jason is angry. I do not know what he told you, but I need you to know I never meant for this to happen this way. Catherine almost admired the sentence. This way. As if there were a kinder method of moving into a friend's home, sleeping with her husband, wearing her mother's necklace, and helping pressure her into divorce. She forwarded the messages to Margaret. Margaret replied, If you meet, do it in public. No private emotional ambush. Catherine did not want to meet. Then Allison sent a third message. He told me the apartment was half his. He told me you knew the marriage was over. He told me the money was his to use. Catherine looked at that one for a long time. Not because Allison deserved her time. Because the message showed the next fracture. Jason was already protecting himself by making Allison sound foolish. Catherine agreed to meet at a hotel lounge at 2. Not the Meridian. A smaller place with glass walls, plain tables, and no memories. Allison arrived early. She looked different in daylight. Less polished. Her hair was tied back. Her face had no heavy makeup. Without Catherine's pearls, without Jason beside her, without the soft lighting of stolen romance, she looked like a woman who had bet her dignity on a man and was starting to suspect the payout would not come. Catherine sat across from her. Allison's eyes filled immediately. I am sorry. Catherine said nothing. I know that is not enough. Good. Allison flinched. Catherine watched her carefully. Once, Allison's tears would have moved her before words did. Catherine had known those tears since childhood. Tears after failed exams. Tears after bad boyfriends. Tears when Catherine's father died and Allison held her in the hospital corridor. The tears had history. That was why they were dangerous. What do you want? Catherine asked. Allison twisted a napkin in her hands. Jason is saying the transfers were my idea. Catherine felt no surprise. Were they? No. I accepted help. I asked sometimes. But he offered. He said it was fine because you and he were basically separated. While you were sleeping in my guest room. Allison looked down. Yes. And wearing my clothes. Yes. And later my mother's necklace. Allison closed her eyes. That was wrong. The words were correct. They did not fix anything. Catherine took a sip of coffee. Her hand was steady. Allison continued, voice shaking. He said you did not care about him anymore. He said you cared about work, the apartment, your perfect routines. He said I made him feel alive. And that made it acceptable? No. But you enjoyed believing it. Allison looked up, tears spilling now. Yes. That honesty was ugly. It was also the first useful thing Allison had said. Catherine leaned back. Why are you here? Because last night he told me none of this would have happened if I had not pushed him. He said I wore the necklace to provoke you. He said the money was my problem if your lawyer asked about it. He said I should tell people you had always been unstable. Catherine felt the old wound twist. Not because she cared what Jason thought now, but because the pattern was so clear. First Catherine had been cold. Now Allison was unstable. Women became defective the moment they stopped serving Jason's version of events. Do you have those messages? Allison nodded. Send them to Margaret. Will that help me? Catherine looked at her. Allison swallowed. Sorry. That sounded honest. Allison's face crumpled. Catherine did not comfort her. The server brought water. Neither of them touched it. After a while, Allison whispered, I ruined 20 years. No, Catherine said. You made choices for 3 months that revealed what 20 years could not survive. Allison pressed the napkin to her mouth. Do you hate me? Catherine thought about it. Hate would have been easy in a way. Clean. Hot. Energizing. But what she felt was heavier and duller. A final closing. No, she said. I do not trust you. That matters more. Allison nodded as if the words hurt because they were fair. Catherine stood. Send the messages. Return anything else you took. Do not come to my apartment. Do not contact my mother. Do not ask mutual friends to speak for you. Will you ever forgive me? Catherine looked at the woman who had once known every corner of her life. That is not your next step. What is? Stop lying to yourself because it makes betrayal sound romantic. Catherine left before Allison could answer. Outside, the air was cold and bright. She walked 2 blocks before she realized she was breathing more easily. Not healed. Lighter. There was a difference. Chapter 9. The company moved quietly at first. Jason's badge stopped working on Tuesday. His calendar disappeared from the shared system on Wednesday. By Thursday, people at Meridian knew enough to whisper, but not enough to say anything directly. Catherine felt the glances. Some curious, some sympathetic, some hungry. She did not feed them. She came to work. She answered emails. She finished reports. She met deadlines. The steadiness was not a performance anymore. It was a boundary. On Friday morning, Naomi called Catherine into a small conference room. Margaret was there by phone. Meridian's legal director sat beside Naomi with a folder closed in front of him. Catherine's stomach tightened. Naomi noticed. "You are not in trouble." Those 5 words loosened something behind Catherine's ribs. The legal director explained that Meridian had found evidence Jason copied internal materials to a personal device. They were still reviewing scope. They would handle it through company channels. Catherine might be asked for a formal statement later, but for now, the company appreciated her disclosure. No one used the word revenge. No one asked whether she had done it because her husband cheated. No one turned a professional violation into a marital mood. Catherine left the room feeling steadier than when she entered. That lasted until lunch. Jason was waiting outside the building. He stood near the side entrance in a dark coat, hands in his pockets, face drawn. He looked less like a successful director now, and more like a man trying to catch a train already gone. Catherine stopped several feet away. "You should not be here. I waited outside. I did not go in. That is not better." He rubbed a hand over his face. "They suspended me." "I know. They are talking about legal action." "Then talk to a lawyer." His eyes flashed. "I am talking to my wife." Catherine held his gaze. "No, you are talking to the woman you tried to discard after using her." The word struck him. A passing employee slowed, then wisely kept walking. Jason lowered his voice. "Please, just tell Naomi you misunderstood. Say the files were old. Say you were emotional." There it was again. Say you were emotional. Make yourself smaller so my misconduct looks softer. Catherine felt the last fragile thread of pity snap. "No. Catherine, if this goes forward, I lose my job. You risked your job. I lose my reputation. You spent mine at dinner. I lose everything." Catherine looked at him for a long moment. His fear was real. That did not make it her responsibility. "You are not losing everything," she said. "You are meeting what you chose." Jason's face hardened. "You sound like Margaret." "Good." He stepped closer. "You think she cares about you? She cares about fees. Allison cares about herself. Your company cares about liability. I am the only person here who ever knew you." That almost worked. Not because it was true. Because for a moment Catherine remembered the early years before Allison, before the transfers, before the bedroom door. Jason did know pieces of her. Her coffee order. Her fear of hospital elevators. The way she hummed when reading spreadsheets. The scar on her wrist from a childhood fall. But knowing someone was not the same as honoring them. "You knew where to cut," Catherine said. "That is not love." He recoiled slightly. Catherine walked past him toward the corner. Jason called after her. "You will regret turning everyone against me." She stopped and looked back. "I did not turn everyone against you. I stopped standing between you and the evidence." Then she left him on the sidewalk. Chapter 10. Jason's mother called that evening. Catherine had expected it. She almost welcomed it, the way a person welcomes the final wave after watching the tide gather. Elaine Hayes had always been kind in comfortable times. She sent soup when Catherine was sick. She remembered birthdays. She called Catherine daughter at holiday dinners and cried during the wedding vows. But blood has a gravity of its own. When Catherine answered, Elaine did not say hello. "What is happening to my son?" Catherine closed her eyes. "You should ask Jason. He says you are trying to destroy him." "Jason says many things." Elaine's voice trembled. "Marriage is hard. Men make mistakes. I am not defending what he did with Allison, but you are taking this too far." Catherine stood by the kitchen window. The city lights shimmered below, indifferent and endless. Which part is too far? His job. His money. The apartment. You are leaving him with nothing. The apartment was mine before him. The money he transferred has records. His job issue is between him and Meridian. You reported him. Yes. Elaine inhaled sharply. Catherine could almost see her, sitting at her dining table with one hand pressed to her chest, surrounded by family photographs where Jason smiled like the son who would never do anything truly ugly. "He is your husband," Elaine said. "You protect family." For years, Catherine might have softened. She had wanted Elaine's approval. Wanted that second family. Wanted to believe marriage gave her more people to love and be loved by. Now the words sounded like a locked door. I protected him for years, Catherine said. I protected him from embarrassment, from questions, from his own carelessness. That is how he learned to expect protection after betrayal. Elaine was silent. I am sorry you are hurting, Catherine continued. But I will not lie for him, fund him, house him, or make his choices look smaller so the family can sleep. Elaine's voice cooled. You have become very hard. Catherine looked at her reflection in the dark glass. Tired eyes. Straight shoulders. No ring. No, she said. I have become unavailable for misuse. The call ended soon after. Catherine set the phone down and felt the final tie to the Hayes family loosen. It hurt. Freedom often did. The next morning, she visited her mother. Helen Hartwell lived 2 hours north of the city in a white house with blue shutters and a garden Catherine's father had planted before he died. Helen opened the door before Catherine knocked twice. For 1 second, Catherine stood on the porch like a child who had made it home after walking through weather. Then her mother pulled her into her arms. Catherine did not explain immediately. She did not need to. Helen held her, one hand moving slowly over her back, and Catherine felt the careful self-control of the past weeks begin to break. In the kitchen, over tea, Catherine told the story. Not every detail. Enough. Jason. Allison. The apartment. The money. The necklace. The company files. The divorce papers at dinner. Helen listened without interruption. Her face changed only when Catherine mentioned the pearls. She wore my necklace? Catherine nodded. Helen's mouth tightened in a way Catherine had seen only twice before, both times when someone had mistaken kindness for permission. Then I am glad you took it back. That simple sentence eased something in Catherine she had not known was waiting for permission. Do you think I am being cruel? Helen looked almost offended. No. Elaine does. Elaine is his mother. Her fear is speaking. That does not make it truth. Catherine wrapped both hands around her teacup. I keep wondering if I should have seen it sooner. Maybe, Helen said gently. But blame belongs to the people who hid, not the person who trusted. Catherine looked down. Her mother's voice softened further. Trust is not stupidity. It only becomes dangerous when you keep offering it after the truth arrives. That night, Catherine slept in her childhood room under a quilt her grandmother had made. The room was smaller than she remembered. The ceiling sloped near the window. A stack of old books still sat on the shelf. For the first time in weeks, no one else's betrayal occupied the space beside her. Before sleeping, she took out the pearl necklace and placed it on the bedside table. In the soft lamplight, the pearls looked like themselves again. Not evidence. Not insult. Hers. Chapter 11. The settlement meeting took place in Margaret's office. Not a coffee shop, not a hotel, not any room Jason could decorate with performance. The conference room was plain. Wood table. Clear water glasses. No flowers. No candles. No audience except lawyers. Jason arrived with counsel and the hollow look of a man who had discovered that consequences do not negotiate with charm. He wore a gray suit, but it was not pressed well. His eyes found Catherine first, then moved away. Allison was not there. Catherine was glad. Her absence kept the room cleaner. Margaret opened the meeting with a short summary. The apartment remained Catherine's. Jason would vacate fully and return all keys, cards, and access devices. The joint account withdrawals would be reconciled. Funds sent to Allison from marital money would be included in repayment. The SUV down payment would be reimbursed in part. Personal property would be separated by inventory. No speeches. No moral lecture. Just lines Jason had to face. He objected at first. Not loudly. His lawyer had probably warned him. He argued about the car, the payment schedule, the transferred funds. He said he did not have enough cash. Margaret placed account records on the table. He said some money had been loans. Margaret asked for loan documents. He said the apartment had been their marital home. Margaret pointed to the deed. Each escape closed quietly. Catherine watched him shrink in small increments. It did not feel as good as she had imagined. That surprised her. She had expected triumph. Instead, she felt tired clarity. Jason was not a dragon being slain. He was a man surrounded by receipts. At one point, he looked at her directly. Do you really need to take everything? Catherine kept her hands folded. I am not taking everything. I am taking back what was mine and asking you to return what you used. You make it sound so clean. It could have been clean when you asked for a divorce honestly. He looked away. The meeting moved forward. Then Jason made his final attempt. What about Allison? Margaret paused her pen. Catherine looked at him. Jason's face was carefully blank. If she received money, should she not be responsible too? There it was. The woman he had brought to humiliate Catherine was now a possible payment source. Catherine felt no pity for Allison, but she saw the ugliness clearly. "Your transfers are your responsibility," Catherine said. "If you want to chase her for reimbursement, do it without using me as your excuse." Jason's jaw tightened. She knew what she was doing. So did you. The room went still. His lawyer whispered to him. Jason sat back, defeated again. After 3 hours, they reached a framework. Not final, but real. Jason would pay. Jason would leave. Jason would stop claiming ownership of the apartment. Jason would not contact Catherine directly except through counsel. Any remaining personal items would be collected by a moving service. When the meeting ended, Jason lingered near the door. Catherine. She looked up. For a moment, he seemed to be searching for the version of her who would soften the ending. He did not find her. Was any of it real? He asked. The question was cruel in its self-pity. It asked Catherine to comfort him about the marriage he had poisoned. She answered anyway. Some of it was real. That is why it hurt. His face changed. She continued. But real memories do not cancel real betrayal. He nodded once, stiffly, and left. Catherine stayed seated after the door closed. Margaret gathered the papers. You handled that well. I feel empty. Empty is not always bad. Sometimes it means the poison is leaving. Catherine almost smiled. Outside, afternoon light fell across the office floor. Catherine looked at her bare ring finger and felt the absence again. Not as a wound this time, as room. Chapter 12. Allison's apology arrived in a box. Not flowers. Not a dramatic letter sprayed with perfume. A cardboard box left with the doorman at Catherine's building. Inside were a silk scarf, 2 books, a pair of earrings, a cashmere sweater Catherine had stopped looking for months earlier, and a small envelope. Catherine opened the envelope last. The letter was written in Allison's careful round handwriting. She admitted what she had taken. She admitted she had enjoyed being chosen in Catherine's home. She admitted she had worn the pearls because Jason said they made her look elegant, and because part of her wanted Catherine to see them. She admitted she had believed Jason when he said Catherine cared more about control than love. She admitted that believing him made betrayal easier. Catherine read the letter twice. Then she set it down. The apology did not ask for forgiveness. That was new. It ended with, I am not asking you to make me feel better. I am sending this because you should not have to wonder whether you imagined the cruelty. You did not. Catherine sat at the kitchen island for a long time. That sentence mattered. Not enough to restore trust. Enough to release one small knot. She forwarded a copy to Margaret because the returned items mattered legally. Then she placed the scarf and sweater in a donation bag. The books went on a shelf after she wiped their covers. The earrings she kept in a drawer, not ready to wear them and not ready to throw them away. Healing, she was learning, had poor organization. 2 days later, Allison asked to meet once more. Catherine almost refused. Then she chose a public park bench near the reservoir in daylight with a clear end time. Allison arrived in a plain coat, no makeup, no jewelry. She did not hug Catherine. Good. They sat with space between them. Allison spoke first. Her voice was hoarse. Jason told me you made him feel small. Catherine looked at the water. Did you believe him? I wanted to. Why? Allison took a long breath. Because I spent my whole life feeling like I was the friend people worried about. You were the capable one. The steady one. The one with the apartment, the job, the mother who kept everything together. When Jason looked at me like I was softer, easier, more alive, I wanted to believe that meant I had won something. Catherine listened. The answer was honest. It was also selfish. You tried to win by standing in my life. Yes. There was no defense in the word. That helped more than tears. Allison continued. He has turned on me now. I know that does not make me innocent. I see it. The way he spoke about you, he speaks about me now. Unstable. Needy. Expensive. A mistake. Catherine felt a dull ache. Not sympathy exactly. Recognition. That is what he does when a woman stops being useful. Allison nodded. For several minutes, neither spoke. The reservoir lay still under a pale sky. Runners passed behind them. A child laughed somewhere near the path. The world continued in small, ordinary ways, rude and merciful. Allison wiped her eyes. I am sorry. I heard you. I know you cannot forgive me. Catherine turned to her. I do not know what I can do later. I know what I can do now. Allison waited. Now, I can accept that you told the truth. I can accept that you returned what you took. I can accept that you are sorry. But I cannot be your friend. Allison closed her eyes. Okay. Catherine stood. Before leaving, she said one final thing. Do not make another woman's life smaller because a man makes you feel seen. Allison bowed her head. Catherine walked away. She did not look back. For once, not looking back felt less like punishment and more like care. Chapter 13. Meridian announced Jason's departure in a single careful email. It did not say affair. It did not say betrayal. It did not say that he had tried to walk out of his marriage with another woman, a stolen necklace, and a stack of dishonest divorce papers. It said Jason Hayes was no longer with the company following an internal review. That was enough. People understood more than the email said. Jason's office was cleared by facilities. His name disappeared from the project directory. His former team absorbed the work. Naomi called Catherine in once more, not to discuss Jason but to offer her the lead role on the hospital launch. Catherine sat very still. I thought there might be concerns, she said. About what? About the conflict. Naomi folded her hands. You disclosed the issue properly. You protected the project. You kept working while your private life was being used against you. Those are not concerns. Those are reasons. Catherine looked down at her hands. For weeks, she had braced for suspicion. For whispers that she had weaponized her job. For people wondering whether she was cold enough to destroy her husband. Instead, Naomi was offering her responsibility. Take the weekend, Naomi said. Think about it. Catherine did not need the weekend. I accept. Naomi smiled slightly. Good. The promotion was not public revenge. It was not a trophy held over Jason's head. It was work Catherine had earned before he tried to reduce her to a discarded wife. That mattered. On her first day as project lead, Catherine arrived early. She stood in the conference room before anyone else came in, looking at the whiteboard covered with timelines and deliverables. The room smelled faintly of dry erase marker and coffee. For years, she had made other people look stable. Jason at dinners. Allison during crises. Her marriage in front of family. Her team when budgets shifted. She had mistaken being needed for being valued. Now she was learning the difference. Her coworker Maya entered first, carrying 2 coffees. I brought one for you, Maya said. Figured project leads need caffeine and moral support. Catherine smiled. Thank you. Maya hesitated. Also, for what it is worth, people are glad it is you. Catherine felt the words settle gently. I am glad too, she said. The meeting began at 9. Catherine kept it clear. No speeches. No mention of Jason. No dramatic reset. She outlined responsibilities, deadlines, risks, and next steps. Her voice was calm. Her team listened. Halfway through, she realized she was not pretending. She was calm. Not unhurt. Not untouched. But present. At lunch, a message arrived from an unknown number. I heard they gave you my project. Catherine knew it was Jason. Another message appeared. Hope it was worth it. She looked at the screen for a moment. Then she blocked the number. No reply. No final dagger. No attempt to prove anything. Some doors did not need to be slammed. They needed to be locked. Chapter 14. The final divorce signing took place 6 weeks after the anniversary dinner. Catherine wore a cream blouse and dark trousers. No pearls. No ring. No armor beyond the documents in front of her and the person she had become while gathering them. Jason arrived late by 4 minutes. It was a small thing, but Catherine noticed because she no longer explained away small things. He looked thinner. His face had lost its confident fullness. Without the company title, without the apartment, without Allison beside him, he seemed less like the man who had commanded a hotel room and more like someone still waiting for the old rules to return. They reviewed the agreement one last time. The apartment remained Catherine's. Jason would complete repayment according to schedule. The SUV would be refinanced or sold. Joint accounts would close. Direct contact would end. No children. No shared business. No remaining reason to pretend. Margaret explained each point. Jason's lawyer confirmed. Catherine listened. Jason stared at the final page. When the time came to sign, his hand hovered. Catherine, he said. She looked at him. I am sorry. The words were quieter than she expected. They might even have been true in that moment. But late truth was not a key. It did not unlock what had been destroyed. Catherine did not punish him with silence. She did not reward him with comfort. I heard you, she said. Jason nodded, as if he understood the limits of that answer. He signed first. His name looked familiar on the page, the same sharp J, the same heavy downward stroke. Catherine had seen that signature on lease forms, birthday cards, delivery slips, hotel checks, and the anniversary card he gave her 1 year before everything collapsed. Now it sat beneath the end. Catherine picked up the pen. Her hand did not shake. She signed her name, Catherine Hayes. Then, after a pause, she looked at it and felt no need to hate the name. It had carried pain. It had also carried her through it. She would decide later whether to change it. She did not need to turn healing into a performance. Margaret notarized the documents. That completes it. There was no music, no dramatic thunder, no applause, just a sentence. Jason stood, nodded once, and left the room. This time, he did not look back. Catherine remained seated for a few seconds after the door closed. She expected to feel joy. Instead, she felt something quieter. Space. Margaret placed one copy of the agreement into a folder and handed it to her. What will you do now? Catherine looked at the folder, then at the window beyond Margaret's desk. Afternoon light made the city look almost clean. Go home, she said. And for the first time in months, the word home did not include Jason. That evening, Catherine returned to the apartment alone. The locks had been changed. The guest room had been repainted. Allison's perfume was gone. Jason's awards no longer hung above her desk. Her mother's pearls rested in a small wooden box on her dresser. The apartment felt unfamiliar. Then slowly it felt like hers. She opened the windows. City noise drifted in. Someone laughed on the sidewalk below. A car horn sounded and faded. Life, rude and ordinary, kept moving. Catherine made tea and sat by the window. For years she had feared being left. Now she understood that being left was not the worst thing. The worst thing was staying where your trust was being used as furniture. The worst thing was calling betrayal complicated because facing it would require you to stand alone. The worst thing was letting someone else write your value into the footnotes of their life. She had not lost a husband to her best friend. She had lost an illusion to the truth. And truth, painful as it was, had returned the keys. Chapter 15. 3 months later, Catherine hosted dinner in the apartment. Not an anniversary dinner. Not a performance. Just dinner. Her mother came. Margaret came. Maya from work came with a bottle of wine. Naomi stopped by for 1 glass and stayed for 2. The table was smaller without Jason's need to impress anyone. The food was simple. Roast chicken, salad, bread, a lemon cake Helen insisted on bringing because grief, in her opinion, required citrus. Catherine wore her mother's pearls. Not to prove they were hers. Because they were. At one point, Helen looked across the table and smiled. You look like yourself again. Catherine touched the necklace lightly. I think I am still learning what that means. Margaret lifted her glass. That is better than returning to an old version. They toasted to that. Later, after everyone left, Catherine stood in the kitchen washing glasses. For a moment, she saw an older memory overlay the room. Allison sitting at the island with wet hair, Jason laughing beside her, Catherine convincing herself that generosity would keep love safe. The memory hurt, but it did not own the room anymore. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar email address appeared. It was from Allison. No long apology this time. Just one line. I am moving out of the city and starting therapy. I will not contact you again unless you ask me to. I hope one day you feel nothing when you think of me. Catherine read it twice. Then she archived it. Not deleted. Not answered. Archived. That felt right. Some chapters did not need to be burned. They simply belonged where they could no longer interrupt the present. The next week, Catherine visited the Meridian Hotel again. She had avoided it since the anniversary dinner, but a client lunch was scheduled there, and she refused to let one room become a cage. The private dining room had been reset for another event. Different flowers. Different linens. No divorce papers. No Allison wearing pearls. No Jason pushing a pen toward her. The manager recognized Catherine and approached quietly. Ms. Hayes, it is good to see you. Catherine smiled. Thank you. Would you prefer a different room? Catherine looked through the open door. For a second, she saw herself seated at the table, hands cold, heart breaking, spine straight. Then the image faded. No, she said. This room is fine. During lunch, she spoke about project timelines, client needs, and hospital rollout plans. She laughed once genuinely. She took notes. She tasted the soup and thought it needed salt. Ordinary things. Beautiful things. When the lunch ended, she remained in the room for a moment after everyone left. She walked to the place where she had sat that night and rested one hand on the back of the chair. You did well, she whispered. Not to the room. To the woman who had been asked to sign away her life under candlelight and chose instead to pick up the truth. Catherine left the hotel without looking back. Outside, the late afternoon sun reflected off the glass towers. The city was loud, impatient, alive. She stepped into it with her shoulders relaxed and her keys in her hand. Her best friend had moved into her home and taken her husband. But in the end, Allison had only taken the man who was willing to be taken. Jason had tried to leave with Catherine's apartment, her money, her dignity, and the story. But he had misunderstood the woman he betrayed. Catherine did not win because she shouted the loudest. She won because she stopped confusing silence with surrender. She won because she kept the records, called the right people, and refused to make betrayal comfortable for the betrayers. She won because when the people she loved tried to turn her kindness into a door they could walk through and rob, she finally closed it. The apartment was still hers. The pearls were still hers. The career she had earned was still hers. Most importantly, the life ahead was hers. Not as a consolation prize. As a return. Chapter 16. Jason tried to return through pity. He waited until Catherine's project launch was close enough to be visible in the press. Meridian had finished the hospital platform rollout, and the company planned a small public reception at the Meridian Hotel. It was not a giant gala. It was not meant to be glamorous. Doctors, hospital administrators, project staff, and a few executives would attend. Catherine would speak for 3 minutes as project lead, thank the team, and step back. That was all. Jason turned it into an opportunity. The first sign came from Maya, who appeared at Catherine's office door with a strange look on her face. "There is something online you should see." Catherine looked up from a schedule. That sentence never brings joy. Maya placed her phone on the desk. The post was from Jason. It was long, polished, and wounded. He wrote about losing his marriage, losing his job, and learning that mistakes could destroy a man when no one left room for mercy. He did not name Catherine, but he did not need to. He wrote about a former spouse who had chosen punishment over healing. He wrote about private pain becoming public consequence. He wrote that he hoped someday people would understand there were two sides to every story. Under the post, several people had commented with sympathy. "Stay strong. People can be so vindictive. Cancel culture has gone too far." Catherine read the comments without expression. Maya watched her carefully. "Do you want me to get Naomi?" "No. Are you okay?" Catherine handed back the phone. "I am tired of men calling consequences cruelty." Maya's mouth tightened. "That is fair." By noon, the post had reached people at Meridian. By 3, someone sent it anonymously to a business newsletter. By 5, Catherine received a message from a number she did not recognize. "You took everything. Was that not enough?" She did not answer. Margaret answered for her. The lawyer sent Jason's attorney a short notice. No threats. No theatrics. Just a reminder that the settlement contained a non-disparagement clause and that further public statements implying false misconduct by Catherine would create consequences he could not afford. The post disappeared that evening. But Jason was not finished. On the night of the launch reception, Catherine arrived early. The hotel staff had set the room with simple flowers, clean white linens, and a small stage near the front. No wall of roses. No gold anniversary menus. Still, the room remembered. Or maybe Catherine did. She stood near the doorway for a moment and felt the old scene flicker across the present. Jason pushing the pen. Allison touching the pearls. Margaret opening the folder. Security waiting at the wall. Then Naomi's voice came from behind her. "You can use another room if you want." Catherine turned. "No. I am done letting bad memories own good rooms." Naomi smiled faintly. "Good answer." The reception began smoothly. Doctors shook hands. The hospital director thanked the team. Maya whispered jokes near the coffee station. Catherine spoke with a senior nurse who said the new platform had already shortened patient wait times in a pilot clinic. That mattered more than Jason's post. For the first time in months, Catherine felt proud without checking whether anyone resented her for it. Then the door opened. Jason walked in. He wore a dark suit and the expression of a man who had practiced humility in a mirror. Beside him was no Allison. That absence was its own message. He wanted to appear wounded, not guilty. Alone, not exposed. Several people turned. Naomi saw him and immediately stepped forward. Catherine touched her arm. "Let him speak first." Naomi's eyes narrowed. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Jason crossed the room slowly. He made no scene at first. He greeted one former colleague with a sad smile. He nodded to another. He moved like a man returning to a place that had wronged him, hoping the room would recognize his suffering before remembering his conduct. When he reached Catherine, he lowered his voice. I came to congratulate the team. You are not on the guest list. I helped build this project. Catherine did not argue. That was partly true. Jason had worked near the project before trying to carry pieces of it elsewhere. A partial truth was always his favorite hiding place. You also violated its trust, she said. His face tightened. Still so cold. Still so clear. A few people nearby heard. Their conversations slowed. Jason seemed to notice the attention and turned slightly, giving the room a wounded profile. I am not here to fight. I just wanted to see whether after everything, you could look me in the eye and admit I mattered too. Catherine almost laughed. There it was. Not apology. Not accountability. A request to be centered in the very room he had endangered. Before she could answer, Naomi stepped beside her. Mr. Hayes, this is a private company event. Jason gave her a bitter smile. Of course. I understand. I am no longer welcome in rooms I helped create. Naomi did not blink. You are no longer welcome in rooms where your access was revoked. The sentence cut through his performance cleanly. 2 security staff entered, not rushing, not dramatic. Jason saw them and flushed. Really, he said. You are having me removed? Naomi answered before Catherine could. Yes. For a second, Jason looked around the room as if searching for someone to object. No one did. That was the public defeat he had not expected. He had expected awkward sympathy. A few old co-workers looking away in discomfort. Maybe Catherine growing pale, looking cruel if she asked him to leave. Instead, the room accepted his removal as ordinary procedure. That hurt him more than anger would have. His eyes found Catherine again. This is what you wanted. Catherine stepped closer, keeping her voice low but clear. No. I wanted a husband who did not bring my best friend to our anniversary dinner with divorce papers. I wanted a friend who did not wear my mother's pearls while taking my place. I wanted a clean project, a safe home, and the truth before it became a weapon. You keep confusing the consequences with my wishes. Jason's mouth opened. No words came. Security guided him toward the door. He did not fight. Fighting would have ruined the last thing he had, which was the appearance of being misunderstood. At the doorway, he turned once. This time, Catherine did not look away. He left. The door closed. The room stayed quiet for one heartbeat. Then the senior nurse Catherine had spoken with earlier lifted her glass. To the team, she said. Someone repeated it. To the team. The room moved on. That was the real victory. Not that Jason was embarrassed. Not that people saw him leave. The victory was that his exit did not break the evening. He no longer had the power to turn every room into a trial of Catherine's feelings. Maya came to Catherine's side and handed her a glass of sparkling water. You breathing? Catherine took it. I think so. Good. Because you still have to cut the cake. Catherine stared at her for a second, then laughed. It startled her. The sound was real, quick, and warm. Not the dry laugh of disbelief. Not the bitter laugh of survival. Just laughter. Across the room, Naomi watched with a small smile. Catherine lifted the glass and took a sip. It tasted sharp and clean. The night continued. Chapter 17. The final message from Allison came in early autumn. Catherine was no longer checking for signs of either of them, which was why the message surprised her. It arrived by email, polite and short. Allison wrote that she had moved to Chicago to live near an aunt while she rebuilt her finances. She had found work at a small design studio. She was in therapy. She had not spoken to Jason in months. She did not ask for a reply. Then, at the end, she wrote one sentence Catherine read 3 times. I used to think I took your place, but I understand now that I only sat in a chair I had no right to touch. Catherine closed the laptop. She did not cry. She did not forgive. She simply sat with the sentence. There had been a time when she wanted Allison to understand everything. Every humiliation. Every night Catherine lay awake in her own apartment wondering when home had become hostile. Every small theft disguised as borrowing. Every moment Allison used softness as camouflage. Now that some understanding had arrived, Catherine discovered she did not need to collect it. Allison's understanding belonged to Allison. Catherine's healing belonged to Catherine. That evening, she went to her mother's house for dinner. Helen had invited a few old friends, women who had known Catherine since childhood and still treated her as if she might be hungry at any moment. They asked about work. They asked about the apartment. They did not ask for details about Jason unless Catherine offered them. After dinner, Helen brought out a box from the upstairs closet. I have been waiting to give this to you. Inside was a bundle of letters tied with blue ribbon. Catherine recognized her father's handwriting on the top envelope. What is this? Letters your father wrote during the year we almost separated. Catherine looked up, startled. Helen smiled sadly. You were too young to know. We had a very hard year. Not the same as yours, but hard enough that I packed a suitcase once. Catherine sat slowly. Her parents' marriage had always seemed solid in memory. Not perfect, but steady. The idea of it almost breaking felt strangely comforting and frightening at once. Helen sat beside her. I am not giving these to you because your father and I stayed together. I am giving them to you because I want you to know something. A marriage surviving is not proof of virtue. A marriage ending is not proof of failure. What matters is whether staying requires you to abandon yourself. Catherine held the letters carefully. Did you ever abandon yourself? Helen looked toward the window. For a while. Then I came back. Your father came back too. That is why we survived. Both people have to return. Catherine thought of Jason asking her to lie for him. Jason calling her cold. Jason trying to re-enter the launch reception to make himself central again. Jason never came back, she said. No, Helen replied. He came back for access. The difference was painful and clean. Catherine stayed the night. In the morning, she walked through the garden with her mother. The air smelled of damp leaves. Helen clipped herbs for the kitchen while Catherine carried the basket. What will you do with the apartment? Helen asked. Keep it. Good. But I am changing things. Helen smiled. Also good. The changes began the following week. Catherine replaced the sofa she and Jason had chosen together, not because it was ugly, but because she was tired of sitting on a compromise. She turned the guest room into a reading room, with built-in shelves and a deep green chair by the window. She donated the extra dishes Allison had liked. She moved her desk to the brightest corner of the living room, where Jason's awards had once hung. The apartment slowly stopped being the scene of betrayal. It became evidence of return. One Saturday, Maya came over to help assemble a bookshelf and mostly made things worse. They ended up sitting on the floor surrounded by screws, laughing over instructions written by someone who clearly hated humanity. Catherine realized later that she had gone an entire afternoon without thinking of Jason. Not because she forced herself, because life had filled the space. That night, after Maya left, Catherine placed her mother's pearls on the small table near the window. She had worn them to dinner twice since the divorce. Each time, the necklace felt less like something rescued and more like something living. She touched one pearl gently. We are all right, she said softly. The apartment was quiet. For once, quiet did not mean lonely. Chapter 18. Winter returned to New York with hard light and clean air. Nearly a year after the anniversary dinner, Catherine stood in the Meridian Hotel again, this time in the grand ballroom, not the private dining room. Meridian Data Systems was hosting its annual client appreciation evening. Catherine had been asked to speak about the hospital launch, which had succeeded beyond expectations. She had tried to decline at first. Naomi refused to let her. You led the work, Naomi said. You can stand in the room. So Catherine stood there, wearing a dark emerald dress and her mother's pearls. Her hair was swept back. Her hands were steady. Around her, guests moved beneath chandeliers, glasses chimed, and a large screen displayed images from the hospital rollout. There was no need for revenge tonight. That was how she knew the revenge had already ended. Revenge still watches the door. Peace notices the flowers. Catherine noticed the flowers. White orchids this time, not roses. Good choice. Maya appeared beside her with 2 glasses of water. Do you know who is not invited? Catherine smiled. I can guess. Do you care? Catherine looked toward the entrance. For a moment, she imagined Jason walking in again, thinner, bitter, rehearsed. Then the image faded before it could become feeling. No, she said, and meant it. The program began at 7. Naomi spoke first, then the hospital director, then Catherine. She walked to the stage while applause rose, not thunderous, not dramatic, but warm enough to reach her. On the screen behind her appeared the project name, the launch timeline, and a photo of the first clinic team using the platform. Catherine looked into the room. She did not think about Jason's lost job. She did not think about Allison's tears. She did not think about the divorce papers, though the hotel walls certainly remembered. She thought about the nurse who had lifted her glass after Jason was escorted out. She thought about her mother saying trust was not stupidity. She thought about Margaret placing documents on a table like a shield. She thought about the woman she had been at that anniversary dinner, cold hands folded in her lap, refusing to sign. Thank you, Catherine began. This project mattered because it protected time. Time for doctors. Time for patients. Time for families waiting for answers. Her voice carried clearly. I learned this year that protection is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a system that works. Sometimes it is a locked door. Sometimes it is a record kept properly. Sometimes it is one person refusing to pretend that a wrong thing is harmless just because naming it would be uncomfortable. The room listened. Naomi's expression softened. Catherine continued. The people who built this platform did so with patience, skill, and integrity. I am proud to stand with them. She did not say more than needed. She did not turn her life into a speech for public consumption. When she stepped away from the podium, the applause rose stronger than before. Later, near the windows overlooking the avenue, Margaret joined her. You sounded different tonight. Different how? Free. Catherine looked down at the city lights. I feel different. Good. For a while, they stood in comfortable silence. Then Margaret said, the final payment came through this morning. Catherine knew what she meant. Jason's last repayment under the settlement. The final amount tied to the joint account and the car down payment. For months, the payments had arrived like small echoes of the betrayal. Each one useful. Each one annoying. Each one a reminder. Now they were done. Thank you, Catherine said. The file can be closed. Catherine breathed in slowly. The file can be closed. Such a plain sentence for something that had once felt like it would swallow her whole. Across the ballroom, people laughed near the dessert table. Maya waved Catherine over. Naomi was speaking with hospital staff. The orchids stood tall in clear vases. The room belonged to the present. Catherine touched the pearls at her throat. She had once believed betrayal would leave her permanently altered in the worst way. Smaller, harder, less able to trust. And yes, it had changed her. It had sharpened her. It had taught her to ask for documents, to check doors, to stop handing the benefit of the doubt to people spending it behind her back. But it had not made her less loving. It had made her more careful about where love was allowed to live. That was not bitterness. That was wisdom paid for at full price. At the end of the evening, Catherine walked past the private dining room. The door was closed. She paused, not from fear, but from recognition. Behind that door, a year ago, Jason had placed papers in front of her and expected her to sign herself smaller. Behind that door, Allison had worn stolen pearls and called betrayal love. Behind that door, Catherine had said no. Everything after that had been difficult. Everything after that had been hers. She placed one hand briefly against the door. Thank you, she whispered. It sounded strange, thanking the sight of a wound. But she understood what she meant. Not thank you for the pain. Never that. Thank you to the woman who survived it. Thank you to the moment she did not surrender. Thank you to the truth for arriving before she signed. Then Catherine walked away. Outside, winter air met her face. The city moved around her, bright and impatient. She stepped to the curb and did not look back at the hotel. There was no need. The story was no longer behind her waiting to be fixed. It was behind her because she had finished it. Chapter 19. The next morning, Catherine changed the name on the apartment mailbox. It was a small task. Almost laughably small after lawyers, hotel managers, company reviews, settlement documents, and public rooms filled with watching eyes. The brass label near the lobby mailboxes had read Hayes for 3 years. Not Catherine Hayes. Not Jason Hayes. Just Hayes, as if marriage had made one shared word sufficient. The building superintendent handed her the new plate in a small envelope. Catherine Hartwell Hayes. She had chosen to keep both names for now. Hartwell because it carried her parents, the trust, her mother's pearls, and the part of herself Jason had never bothered to understand. Hayes because she refused to treat the last 3 years as something that had erased her. The name had been carried through fire. That made it hers to decide, not his to stain. The superintendent offered to install it. Catherine asked to do it herself. He gave her a screwdriver with a puzzled smile and stood back. The old plate came loose with 2 careful turns. Catherine held it in her palm for a moment. It was only metal. It had no power beyond what people gave it. Still, she remembered the first day it was installed, when Jason kissed her cheek in the lobby and said they looked official now. Official had not meant safe. She set the old plate aside and fixed the new one into place. The sound of the screws tightening was quiet and deeply satisfying. Upstairs, the apartment was warm with morning light. Catherine opened the windows, watered the basil plant on the sill, and made coffee. No one else's mug sat in the sink. No guest suitcase leaned against the wall. No hidden laughter waited behind a bedroom door. For a long time, she stood in the living room and simply listened. The quiet was no longer the silence before humiliation. It was the quiet of a place returned to its owner. On her desk lay three things: the final divorce folder, the closed Meridian project file, and the wooden box holding her mother's pearls. Catherine placed the divorce folder in the bottom drawer. She placed the project file on the shelf with her work binders. She left the pearl box on the desk where sunlight could touch it. Then she opened a blank notebook. She did not write a plan for revenge. There was no one left to chase. She wrote a plan for herself. Paint the reading room. Invite mom for spring. Take 1 full week off after launch review. Buy new sheets. Learn what peace feels like without waiting for it to be interrupted. The last line made her stop. Learn what peace feels like. It sounded simple. It was not. Peace had to be practiced after betrayal, the way a body learns to trust a healed bone. Slowly, carefully, with patience for the ache that sometimes returns before rain. Catherine closed the notebook and looked around the apartment. Her best friend had once walked through these rooms believing closeness meant access. Her husband had once walked through them believing marriage meant ownership. Both had been wrong. Love could be invited. Trust could be earned. Access could be revoked. That was not cruelty. That was adulthood. By noon, Catherine left for work. In the lobby, she paused by the mailboxes and looked at the new nameplate. Catherine Hartwell Hayes. Not abandoned. Not replaced. Not the woman at the table with a pen pushed toward her hand. The woman who took the pen back. She stepped out into the city, and the door closed behind her with a clean, certain sound. Subscribe for more stories about quiet women, hidden power, and the moment betrayal meets consequences.